Alrighty, what do we got going on today? Oh no. we we've got those people. Good morning everybody. Steve here, retired in Korea. I have a YouTube channel called The Buried Life that you can check out over here. And yeah, be sure to like and subscribe to that. And basically what ended up happening, the wife and I, we sold everything in the United States and we had a couple of suitcases and we came and retired here in Korea. Yeah, it's been very interesting. With that side note, my wife is a Korean citizen when we met and married, and we've been together for 35 plus years. And then she became a U.S. citizen. And when we came back to Korea, we found out there was a visa, the F4 visa that my wife could get for her Korean ancestry. And then I was able to get a visa, an F1 visa, because I was a spouse of her. And those visas allowed us to retire here in Korea. Because Korea isn't really a, how would you say, an expat-friendly type of retirement spot, kind of like Thailand or Philippines or Bali or Portugal or a number of other places, Costa Rica, Puerto Rico, places where it's a lot easier to be an expat and have a retiree pension or pensionado in some of the South American countries, where if you have a pension and you meet certain requirements and you're not a felon or anything like that, you can end up retiring in that country and have the same rights as citizens. But with that said, that is how we were able to retire here in Korea. Now, recently I've run across a handful of people that have come to Korea and either on a long-term visa, they're married to a Korean, or they're married to, the man is a Korean and the U.S. woman has married the Korean man and that's why she's in Korea. Or it ends up that you have an American man who has a Korean spouse and that's why they're in Korea. And usually I find that's the case. Usually the man is a U.S. service member or was in the past, married a Korean, and they lived and worked their lives, and now they're coming back to Korea and they're retiring, kind of like what me and the wife did. But I've run across a number of people that don't seem to understand and make these assumptions about how restrictive things are in Korea. Now, recently there was a discussion that a lady put out who was an American citizen, or wasn't, she's an American citizen, she's married to a Korean. And then there was another guy that he made statements similar to hers, as saying, hey, you don't want to retire in Korea because, you can't do anything and you're so restricted in what you can and can't do. You can't buy property and all this stuff. And it's like, I bought property. I bought this place. A 4-bedroom, 2-bath. I don't understand. I can buy a car. I can have a bank account. I can get phone service. I can pay utilities. I can do a number of things that the same number of things that I could do in the United States, I could do here in Korea. And this person was very convinced that no, you don't. And it's like, I have the bill of sale for my apartment. I can buy a car. I have cell phone service, the whole 9 yards. I can travel, I can drive, I have a high pass system. I don't understand why these people come up with these ideas and this misinformation of state and making such statements as saying, hey, you as a foreigner here in Korea, you just don't have rights, and this one lady, she said, it's so restricted because you can't have and do certain things. And I'm like, I'm really not understanding where they get this information from. Now, it could be that the husband or the spouse who is Korean is telling this person and saying, no, you can't do anything, you can't do this or that, and to keep them under their thumb, maybe. That's kind of messed up. I'm not saying that's the case with this person, but I've seen it in my experience of foreigners who marry other people from different countries and not telling them all the information, kind of to keep them under control, and to be manipulative. And then that's totally wrong. So anyway, I just want to go over some information and the rights of a citizen and permanent resident in Korea. Now, there's a person that I had left comment for. You mentioned being very restricted and that you don't have any rights as a citizen or a permanent resident. First of all, when you make statements like this, provide proof. That would be a great thing. It's kind of like, oh, the moon is made of cheese. And it's like, okay, you made the statement, now provide the proof. That's you can make all the statements you want. That doesn't matter. What matters is the proof that you provide. And in this case, there's a huge lack of it. Can you be specific and name the rights a permanent resident or foreign spouse cannot have? What specific restrictions are you talking about, with the exception of the right to vote? Now, this is kind of interesting because we'll get into this, because actually I can vote after a certain amount of time of living here and being a permanent resident in Korea. I can vote. So there are some requirements. You have to spend some time here and, of course, not get in trouble and so on and so forth. But yeah, I could eventually end up voting here in Korea. As a foreigner, I have an F1 visa, and my wife, who has Korean ancestry, has an F4. I can participate in Korean health insurance, which, if you know anything about the Korea visa system, educational visas, work visas, tourist visas, work vacation visas, kind of the visa that I'm on and that the wife is on, you can get Korean health insurance, the national health insurance, and that kicks in after 90 days. So if you stay longer in Korea for more than 90 days, the Korean government will send you a letter to your residence and say, hey, you're here and you have an opportunity to sign up for Korean national health care, or provide a policy or something that's accepted in lieu of the national health care. But you will have health care. That's one of the requirements of staying in Korea. I can purchase additional insurance, which could be life insurance, insurance for the car, the apartment, anything that a natural-born Korean citizen can buy and purchase, I can buy and purchase. I can have bank accounts. I can get loans. Of course, I'm not a loan person now anymore. I can buy property. I can buy vehicles. I can pay my utilities, cell phone, internet service. I have freedom of speech and religion. I can submit grievances to the government. The same legal protection under Korean law, freedom of religion, so many other rights as a permanent resident. And we'll actually go over some of these things. Please read the below and tell me what I'm restricted in regards to what I can and can't do. So like I said, as this person had said, oh, you're very restricted. There's a lot of things that you can and can't do. And this bothers me. And the gentleman that in the past that had said, hey, there's a lot of things as a permanent resident and a KRC holder, a Korean resident card holder, having a visa of some sort for long-term stay in Korea, whether it's work or kind of like what we did for retirement, you're restricted in some ways. This person has said you couldn't buy property, and just to let you all know, you don't even have to be a permanent resident of Korea to buy property here. There's people that buy property in Korea. They're from China, they're from Japan, they're from other countries, and they buy property sight unseen. Some of them come over and visit. Some of them just do the FaceTime thing and say, yeah, I like it, I'm going to buy it. They do the wholesale everything over the internet, and it's a little bit more involved, but it is done. You don't even have to be a permanent resident to buy property here in Korea. So I had another gentleman tell me, no, you can't buy property, and it's like, yeah, you can, and you can even do it without even entering Korea. So let's just stop with the misinformation. And when I talk about proof, this is from the Korean Constitution, Chapter 2 on Rights and Duties of Citizens, which also covers permanent residence, because you are considered a citizen of Korea as long as you have an appropriate visa, whether it's work, education, or kind of what we have. All citizens shall be assured to human worth and dignity and have the right to pursue happiness. Kind of sounds like the U.S. Constitution, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It shall be the duty of the state to confirm and guarantee the fundamental and inviolable human rights of individuals. All citizens shall be equal before the law. There shall be no discrimination in political, economic, social, and cultural life on account of sex, religion, or social status. No privileged caste shall be recognized or ever established in any form. This is kind of interesting because, it's kind of a good rule. Now, with that being said, we have a constitution in the United States. We have the Bill of Rights, and other countries have similar documents that say these are the rights of our citizens and what you can have and so on and so forth and freedoms and all of this. Now, is there any country on earth that follows those rights and duties of citizens to a T? No. There's always going to be some corruption or some perversion of those rights upon citizens. But what we hope for in any constitution is that we put forth these standards and we grow towards actually attaining those things so that we can fully put into effect these rights for citizens. So just like you have law enforcement in the United States, you have some cops that are bad apples, but the majority of them are not. So yeah, is there any government system that is 100% perfect in enacting and enforcing the rights of its citizens? No. Some are a hell of a lot worse than others, but that's a whole nother video. All citizens shall be equal before the law, and there shall be no discrimination for all of that stuff. No caste system, as we see in other countries. Decorations and distinctions have no privileges shall ensue therefrom. So in other words, if you got awarded some type of medal or something like that, then it ends up that you would get money or whatever from the government to kind of a little corruption. Yeah, we're not going to do the corruption thing. Article 12, all citizens enjoy personal liberty. No person shall be arrested, detained, searched, seized, or interrogated except provided by law. This is very interesting because this seems boring, but I've seen enough people complain about the laws in Korea who have retired in Korea, and it's like, why are you getting mad? You signed up for this. You should have done your due diligence and read what rights you have, and look at the laws and look at how things are carried out. But just complaining and saying, oh, I hate this, and da, 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 da. Well, you do have your opinion and you're right, but you should have also, in my opinion, read the rights and duties and so on and so forth. And so when these things come up and you don't like them, it's just like, well, that's part of living overseas. You're going to have some things that you don't like and things that you do like, but don't rail and get mad and angry and let that affect your calm, because it's in the Constitution. And just because you didn't read the laws of the land, which you agreed to follow when you signed up for your visa here in Korea, even as a tourist, you have to obey the laws of the land. Yeah, I just find those two things very different. No person shall be punished, placed under preventive restrictions, or subject to involuntary labor except as provided by law through lawful procedures. No citizen shall be tortured or compelled to testify against himself in criminal cases. Talks about warrants, case arrest, detention, seizure, search. Pretty much kind of the same thing as that we have in the United States. There are exigent circumstances of where police can enter your home, for certain reasons, and they don't need a warrant. Same thing here in Korea. Any person who is arrested or detained shall have prompt assistance of counsel. In other words, that you have the right to counsel. When a criminal defendant is unable to secure counsel by his own efforts, he will be assigned one by the state, which is reminiscent of what we see in the United States and many other countries. No person shall be detained or left without being informed of the reason and of his right to assistance of counsel. This is very interesting. I think this is important, that when you get arrested or detained, they have to give you a reason. And unfortunately, I think this would be good for the United States. How many times have we seen videos of people getting detained or arrested, and the people saying, what am I being arrested for? What am I being detained? And law enforcement doesn't give an answer. It's only until after they go to the station, they're processed, that they find out what they're being charged with. But I think this is very important. So that's kind of a good thing there. Talk about that. Any person who is arrested or detained shall have the right to request a court to review the legality of the arrest or the detention. In other words, you have legal recourse and due diligence, or not due diligence. What am I thinking of? Due process. I'm thinking about due process. Talks about defendant's confession due to torture, violence, intimidation, unduly prolonged arrest, deceit, etc. is not a good thing. No citizen shall be prosecuted for an act that does not constitute a crime under the law in force at the time it was committed, nor shall be placed in double jeopardy. Kind of a good thing. No restrictions shall be imposed upon the political rights of any citizen, nor shall any person be deprived of property rights by means of retroactive legislation. No citizen shall suffer unfavorable treatment on account of an act not his own doing, but committed by a relative. Yeah, that's kind of an important thing. All citizens shall enjoy freedom of residence and the right to move at will, travel. All citizens shall enjoy freedom of occupation, freedom of intrusion into their place of residence. In other words, you almost have this right to privacy. Search and seizure. A warrant must be issued by a judge upon request of a prosecutor, and it shall be presented. The privacy of no citizen shall be infringed. This is very interesting because in the United States, we don't have the right to privacy. Privacy of correspondence of no citizen shall be infringed. All citizens shall enjoy freedom of conscience, freedom of religion. No state religion shall be recognized, and church and state shall be separated. All citizens shall enjoy freedom of speech, of press, and freedom of assembly and association. Kind of sounds similar to the United States. Licensing and censorship of speech and the press and licensing of assembly and association shall not be recognized. The standards of news services, whatever. We're looking at rights of citizens, and I'm not concerned about the news service because I'm not in that wheelhouse. Neither speech nor press shall violate the honor or the rights of another person or undermine public morals or social ethics. Now, this is kind of interesting because this is where we're going to get into libel. Maybe it's gossip. Maybe you're bad-mouthing somebody and it's not true, of a business, giving false reviews. This kind of balances the scale, in my opinion, of things like that. So it kind of minimizes the keyboard warriors that we have in the United States and things like that. All citizens shall enjoy freedom and learning of the arts. Rights of authors, inventors, scientists, engineers, and artists shall be protected by law. So there's copyright. The right of property of all citizens shall be guaranteed. The contents and limitation thereof shall be determined by law. The exercise of property rights shall conform to the public welfare. Some other things, all citizens will have the right to vote under the conditions as prescribed by law, which is what I was talking about. And eventually, I think it's like 3 years. Once I spend 3 years as a permanent resident here in Korea, I can be able to vote. So yeah, this again, the whole claim that you can't do anything, I've had people tell me you can't ever vote in Korea. So I don't know why you would want to retire in Korea, because you just don't have any rights. You will always be a foreigner. To that, I would say I'm 6'2", 255 pounds, brown eyes, brown hair. Yeah, family's German, kind of that neck of the woods of the world. I will always be a foreigner. 100%. Just kind of similarly, like my wife is a foreigner when she goes to the United States, or when my wife and I go to other countries, we're foreigners. Yeah, there's just some things it's not going to change unless I get a lot of plastic surgery, and I would make a pretty ugly Korean. It just wouldn't work out. Koreans are just so much more handsome. Anyway, it is what it is. If you're a foreigner, you're going to be a foreigner. If you have some type of negative connotation to that, and that is what you put upon yourself, is you're just going to be a foreigner, then you're living in your own prison. Okay, citizens shall have the right to hold public office under conditions prescribed by law, which I have no inclination of doing whatsoever. All citizens shall have the right to petition in writing to any government agency under the conditions as prescribed by law. Again, rights of addressing certain grievances, the state shall be obligated to review such petitions. All citizens shall have the right to be tried in conformity with the law by judges qualified under the Constitution and the law. This is very important because not only here in Korea, but in other countries as well, what I found out is people get in trouble and then they badmouth the country because they broke the law or they didn't know the law that they broke, and they're all pissed off about it. Maybe you should know the laws of the land in which you're planning to retire to or visit. You know, how many times have we seen videos of people, what was that, Brittany Griner, who went to Russia because she played there in Russia, and then she brought cannabis oil in her vape and all this stuff, and they caught her and she went to prison, and it's like, hello, that is against the law for Russia, so whoop-de-doo, it's, such a big injustice for Brittany Griner. No, it's not. It's the laws of the land, and if you should follow said laws of said land that you're traveling to and working in, I don't know, it's just a thing. But what are the odds? Citizens who are not in active duty or service shall not be tried by a court-martial within the territory. This doesn't really matter because in Korea, if you're a Korean citizen, you have a duty, mandatory military service for males of 18 to 24 months, somewhere around there. It's not mandatory of women, but there are a lot more women who are in the Korean military than I've ever seen at any other time of my life. And so it's more widely accepted than it was in the past. And yeah, I did the United States military and retired, and it worked out well for me. Citizens who are not in active duty should not be tried, blah, blah, blah. We went at it. All citizens shall have the right to a speedy trial. The accused shall have the right to a public trial without delay in the absence of justifiable reasons to the contrary. Similar to the United States. Presumed innocence until guilty. Victim of crime shall be entitled to make a statement during the court proceedings as prescribed by law. Criminal suspect or an accused person who has been placed under detention is not indicted as provided by law or is acquitted by a court shall be entitled to claim just compensation from the state under conditions prescribed by law. Talks about damages, sustained damages. There's ways that you can put in, and certain people under the state, and that there shall not be immune because of their status within the government if they do something wrong to somebody else and damages occur. Talks about military service, which I don't need to worry about. Citizens who have suffered bodily injury or death due to criminal acts of others may receive aid from the state under the conditions prescribed by law. There's also lawsuits that you can file as well, kind of similar to what we see in the United States. Equal right to receive an education corresponding to their abilities. Citizens who have children to support shall be responsible for at least their elementary education and other education as provided by law. Yeah, education is key. The more you know. Compulsory education is free of charge, which is kind of awesome, kind of like our public school system, but it's a lot better here in Korea than it is in the United States. That's a whole nother video. Independence, professionalism, political impartiality of education and autonomy of institution of higher learning shall be guaranteed under the conditions as prescribed by law. State shall promote lifelong education. In other words, you still see stories here in Korea of people that were, in their 80s or 90s getting their high school diploma, getting a college degree, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, that's kind of an important thing. Education system, schooling, citizens shall have the right to work. I'm retired, so I don't need to worry about that. But with me, in my F1 visa, I cannot work. So there are requirements because I have to provide for myself, and I have pensions and other money, so I don't have to worry about that. But with my wife, with the F4 visa, if she elected to work, which she doesn't want to do that, and I totally get that, she could work if she wanted to. And again, it talks about minimum wage system as prescribed by law, similar to what we have in the United States. All citizens have the duty to work, prescribed by law, conditions, blah, blah, blah. Conditions of working shall be determined by law in such ways to guarantee human dignity. And in other words, yeah, slavery is not a good thing. protection of working women, and shall not be subjected to unjust discrimination in terms of employment, wages, and working conditions. Special protections to children, working conditions and where you work. Only those public officials who are designated by law have the right to association, collective bargaining, and collective action. We'll kind of skip down here. All citizens shall be entitled to a life worthy of human beings. The state shall have a duty to endeavor to promote social security and welfare. The state shall endeavor to promote welfare and the rights of women, which is good because in the past, just like many other countries, wasn't so much before, but it's continuing to get better and better. The state shall have the duty to implement policies for enhancing the welfare of senior citizens and the young, kind of similar to what we have in the United States. Citizens are incapable of earning a livelihood. The state can take care of them within certain parameters, kind of what we see in the United States with Social Security or disability of Social Security disability. Prevent disasters, that's what the state does. All citizens have the right to healthy and pleasant environment, have a duty to care for the environment. That's why a lot of times in Korea, it's a lot cleaner here in Korea than what I experienced in the United States. But there are still some places and things that can always be improved upon in any country. So yeah, it's a continuing process. Environmental duties, all of this, marriage and family shall be entered into, sustained on the basis of individual dignity and equality of the sexes, and the state shall do everything in its power to achieve that goal. They shall protect mothers. Health of all citizens shall be protected by the state. That's why we have the national health insurance here in Korea. Excuse me. Freedoms and rights of citizens shall not be neglected on the grounds that they are not enumerated in the Constitution. So they gave themselves some wiggle room to, hey, if there's some other things that come up, Article 37 comes up and says, hey, it's just because it's not written here does not mean that you don't have certain rights. Freedoms and rights of citizens may be restricted by law only when necessary for national security. This is interesting because we're seeing this with the Korean doctors' strike, which strangely, we don't hear anything in the news anymore about it. The maintenance of law and order or the public welfare, think national disasters, emergencies, military actions, and things like that. Your duties as a citizen in pretty much any country, if there's a natural disaster, can limit your right or freedom of movement into certain areas because it's been deemed dangerous and so on and so forth. That's what we see here. Citizens have the duty to pay taxes. So, yeah, you just can't get away from taxes. I don't think there's any country, maybe Abu Dhabi or something like that, where you don't have to pay taxes, but I wouldn't want to live there. All citizens have the duty of national defense under the conditions prescribed by law. No citizen shall be treated unfavorably on account of the fulfillment of his obligation of military service. So anyway, yeah, there's a lot of rights that citizens have. That permanent residents have here in Korea. My OCD is kind of kicking in. Okay. So, yeah, I find it very problematic when people argue and complain about living and retiring here in Korea when they don't even know what their rights are. And the thing that really bugs me even more are the people that have been to Korea, who live in Korea, and put misinformation, such as saying you can't buy a car, you can't buy property. There's a number of things that you cannot do and cannot have as a permanent resident here in Korea, and I have unequivocally found that out to be absolutely untrue. Not only based upon the rights of citizens that we just read from the preamble of the Korean Constitution, which is kind of like the Bill of Rights, I've actually experienced this. I've had people argue with me saying, you can't buy property as a foreigner. And it's like, I bought this place. The place that I'm sitting in right now is in my name. Okay, I went to closing, I paid money, it's stamp, thumbprint, the whole 9 yards. Been there, done that, got the trophy. I had an individual tell me that no foreigners can buy property, and it's like, yeah, I looked into it even further, and you don't even have to be in Korea to buy property. You can be on a tourist visa and come and buy property, but you don't even have to be in Korea to buy property. As long as you have the money and/or the financing, and it's approved, because you have to get approval to buy property here in Korea. It's just kind of like checking off a box. And basically what it comes down to is they don't want money laundering and drug money and whatever. So that's kind of the reason behind that. But yeah, I've bought the apartment. I can buy a car. I can do everything that I can do in the United States, I can do here in Korea, with the exception of owning a firearm. Now, I can own a firearm here in Korea, but the storage of the firearm is going to be at a specified police office or police station. And if I want to go fire said firearm, I have to give reasons. There's a limit on how much ammunition you can buy and so on and so forth. It can only be used for sport and hunting and so on and so forth, which is vastly different than the United States. But the crime rate is so low here because the Constitution in Korea as a whole is a more respectful nation than what I see than in the United States. Not saying that all people in the United States are bad. There's huge pockets of people in the United States, towns and cities, and sometimes entire states that are welcoming, they're friendly, they're, for the most part, the people are good, and it's law-abiding. There's less crime in certain areas in the United States than other areas. We know that for a fact. But as a whole, when we look at Korea versus the United States, Korea as a whole, I don't have to worry as much. Crime is a lot less lower here in Korea. I have never, ever felt unsafe in Korea in my life, and I've been here for 12 years, 13, 14, almost 14, 15 years now, something like that, somewhere around there, if you count up all the time. Coming up on almost 2 years now since I've been retired in Korea, and never once have I felt unsafe. Maybe it's because I'm 6'2" and kind of a little bit bigger. Maybe I don't have to worry about that. But my wife has never felt unsafe, and the wife's family and all that stuff is a normal human being, and going through the course of the day and going out, maybe having drinks and food and whatever, never had any problems. Now, is there still crime in Korea? Yes, there is. I haven't found a society where there's not crime. So, but with that being said, the rights of citizens and the rights of people here in Korea, permanent residents and Korean citizens, we're afforded the same rights and duties and responsibilities. And with that, we should follow in step with honoring and respecting other people in the country that we live in. Now, it doesn't apply just to Korea, but if you're going to retire overseas to another location, you should have respect for the people. And that way you don't become the ugly foreigner or the ugly American. And more often than not, the ugly Americans, from what I've seen, are the people that, oh, I hate this, I hate that, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, they do things differently here in Korea. But if you expect things to be done here in Korea the way they were done in the United States, and you get angry and it's like, why are you doing this? And blah, blah, I had somebody that I was talking with, and they were mad that when they went to a Korean government office that they didn't speak English. And I'm like, you do realize you voluntarily came to Korea to retire, whose primary language is Korean, right? So what? You're complaining because of what? It's kind of like somebody. It's kind of like the guy I heard. The lady and her husband went to China, and they got mad, and they ranted and raved about why they didn't speak English. How come you don't speak Chinese? And even then, that might have been a thing a long time ago. But with technology and today, and I mean cell phones and apps and all this stuff, translation things that we have, you don't need to know Korean because everything could be done through your phone. It's going to get to a point of where There's even, and I love my Apple phone, but Apple has so far to go. There was a gentleman that was telling me that on his Android phone, I think it was Samsung or whatever, that when he makes phone calls, he has it set up somehow to where he speaks English and it gets translated to Korean to his wife and friends and whatever, and vice versa. That is insane. And I've seen people going to government offices. I've seen them going to doctors. I've seen them going into pharmacies and stores, and where they don't speak Korean, but you pull out your phone and you got this translation service that before you would have to hire somebody to translate for you, or you would have to spend an inordinate amount of time of learning language and so on and so forth. And we don't need that these days. Is it great to do? Yes, my wife wishes I knew more Korean than I did. But with that being said, for the people that rant and rave and say, I don't understand, they should speak more English. And it's like you have a brand new iPhone and there's these apps and translations. So yeah, it might take a little bit longer, but you can speak into your phone and it'll show it to them. It'll be translated in Korea and it will speak it in Korean. So really, we're going to argue and be mad because somebody doesn't know English. How about them being mad with you because you don't know Korean? Let's flip the script. So then they would get mad because they're mad because they don't know Korean. Does that make sense? No, it doesn't make sense. There needs to be some flexibility when we talk about retiring overseas in whatever country that you go to. And I just find it interesting that there's a lot of people that put out misinformation. And the ones that really get me the most are the people that have never been to that country that say this is how they do things there. And it's like, I had a person tell me that I could not rent property here in Korea. And I'm like, before we bought our house, our apartment here, before I bought my apartment here in Korea, we had to rent a place, and I was able to rent a place. And it's, no, you can't. And it's like, I did it for 2.5 months, 3 months, waiting for my visas to get approved. And yeah, I did. Please tell me or give me some proof showing that I can't, because I see lots of people doing it. Yeah, and it ends up that this person never spent any time in Korea. And again, it's that keyboard warrior thing that we got going on in the United States and other countries, of people that are just like, they hear something and they make assumptions and or both, and then they make these crazy statements. But what bothers me is people that are living and retired in a country, in a foreign country, are making untrue statements about you don't have any rights, you can't buy property, you can't have a car, you can't do this or can't do that or whatever, and making all these statements, and they actually live here. And that bothers me because that shows me that they don't know their ass from a hole in the ground. They haven't taken the time to look at the rights of what they can and cannot do here in Korea as a permanent resident or even as a tourist. And if you're retired here in Korea and you're telling me that, oh, you can't buy property, yeah, you can. And you can even do it as a tourist. You can buy property and not even be in Korea in the country. So, and another discussion I had, an individual was saying, oh, this is what happens and so on and so forth. And it's like, no, that's not the case. I just bought this apartment. So this was a little while ago. I said, I just bought an apartment, and these are the steps. You have to get a Korean realtor. When you pick out the property, you put some money down as a kind of a down payment, or hold the property and to do the contract, and then you do your due diligence and get some inspections. And if you want to continue on, then you move on, and then that deposit money will be included as part of the price of the property as you put money down, kind of like what we do with down payments in the United States. So, and did all that, and depending on whether you have financing or you're paying in cash or bank wire, whatever it is that you're doing, you go to closing, there's your realtor, there's your lawyer who's going to be stamping and making things, and you got to do your stamp and whatever. And you got to get permission from the Korean government. All that's done beforehand. But at closing, everything is done, and then boom, you pay the money, and the property is yours. And about 3 weeks later, you will get the title to the property, kind of like what we have, a title in the United States. And because we purchased ours in cash, I'm the full-fledged owner of this apartment. and this guy was, no, that's not how it works, and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, please show me proof of this. And based upon what? How many properties have you bought in Korea? And it ends up that the person who was making all these statements, who is living and working in Korea, has never bought property in Korea. So Lord knows, what are the odds of them not knowing how things actually work? Yeah, I'm amazed at people on how they can make such statements based on the misinformation. Now, some things come because they get it from friends or relatives or, coworkers and things like that, and they hear misinformation and they spread and continue spreading that misinformation, and then it comes along, and so people assume that foreigners can't buy property in Korea, or that you don't have any rights as a permanent resident here in Korea. Yeah, you need to do your own due diligence. And you need to find out what rights you have, what you can and can't do. And that's part of the reason that I made these videos, is because I saw a lot of misinformation of, what you can and can't do as a resident, a permanent resident here in Korea under a visa, whether it's a educational, work, or, a visa that we have. You got to do your due diligence, people. You have to, And then especially the thing that gets me the most is the people that takes this misinformation or absolutely untrue and false information and spreading it out as if it was true to people who are looking to come and retire here, similar to what the wife and I did. And then that's giving people pause, because it's like, well, wait a second. This guy said over here that as a foreigner, you can't buy property, or that you can't open a bank account, or you can't do this or that or whatever. And it's like, no, that's not true. But they said, and it's like, listen, I bought property, we have cars, we have, yeah, I'm not seeing it. So there's a disconnect. Getting your information from the uninformed, and especially when you get the information from people who have never been there, done that, that can lead to some serious problems. And that can change the whole thing. It could make the difference between somebody coming to Korea and retiring or not. And, that's huge. Why would you want to be responsible for putting out misinformation? And the thing that gets me is when I confront people about this, like the person who said you can't buy property, or the other guy says, oh, you can't do this or that, or, whatever. The number of things that I've seen, and I ask them for proof. Well, my wife's family said that's not proof, okay? Because there have been things that family members hear that are not true. What are the odds? Like buying property. I had a person tell me, well, foreigners can't buy property, and my wife's family, they said this, and this, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, you absolutely can. So, and I know, I get it. Your family members, your wife's family members have a good heart, they have a good intention, and they want to help you out, but maybe they misheard, or they didn't understand, and maybe there was a time where, things were different and laws were different. It's not the most up-to-date information, but we owe it to ourselves to verify, trust but verify. And I had people who were interested in coming to Korea and retiring, and they said, no, we can't, because you can't do this, you can't do that, no, you can't use that visa. And it's like, yeah, you can. And if you have any questions, here's our immigration lawyer. And you can ask her the questions, and she will give you the skinny on all that. And matter of fact, let me see if I can find that lawyer. Dun, dun, dun. There it is. So, oh, that is huge. So I need to make this a little bit smaller. But this is the immigration lawyer that we use. Let me get on this side. This is the immigration lawyer that we used when we got here to Korea to get our F1 and F4 visas. I can't remember the amount of money, but it wasn't much. I thought it was going to be a hell of a lot more, but it wasn't. They work in the same building as Korean immigration in Songtan, which is close to Osan Air Base. But also know that you can do and submit your F1 and F4 visa at a Korean consulate in the country that you live in. So you can get all that done before you even come to Korea, so you don't have to wait like we did for, 2.5 months. So for 2.5 months, we just kind of had to hang around. We couldn't buy property. We couldn't get a bank account. Couldn't get Korean cell phone service. In other words, we just kind of had to wait and just kind of be in limbo until we could do all that. Now, could we rent a property? Yes, we could. And so, for the person that told me you can't rent property unless your visa's approved, no, absolutely you can. Because when you submit your visa paperwork, you're on hold. Your tourist visa is on hold until you get an approval or a disapproval on your application packet for that said visa. So during that time that we're waiting, boom, can you rent a property? Yes, you absolutely can. And again, it's people that make these statements. I don't know where they get their information from, or their misinformation from. But anyway, if you're interested, contact this lady here. I don't get anything for promoting or giving her information out for this immigration lawyer. They're great. They don't speak English, but again, they were able to help us through our immigration in submitting the F4 and F4 visa after we got here on a tourist visa. Because we're still like, what happens if we don't like it, if we don't want to do it? But in hindsight, if I was going to do it all again, I would get the F1 and F4 before we even came to Korea. But you can do it either way. So the good thing is, but she keeps us up to date. She's able to do everything as far as our renewals. The prices that we pay are just minimal compared to, it's worth it. I've had people say, there was another discussion that I saw where it said, well, these people, they tried to submit their F1 and F4 visa and they got denied. And it's like, it probably got denied because there was incomplete paperwork. Something wasn't filled out right. Something wasn't correct with the packet. And I've seen people talk about this. I've seen the frustrations of people saying, well, we submitted this, and then they're saying, no, that's not all the paperwork. You also need this and this and this. Our immigration lawyer is well versed because they're in the same building as Korean immigration. And so any changes that come about, boom, they're on it. So we didn't have any problems whatsoever. Other problems that you might have is if your criminal background check comes back and there's some bad things you did in your past that you got caught for, that can, maybe that has something to do with it. And that's just part of the game. So there is no guarantee. But I would say with certainty, if you don't have any big problems or felonies in your life, and you're a good citizen, and you're responsible, and all of these things, and you have your paperwork and all your ducks in a row, you're probably going to get your visas approved. So anyway, that's the immigration lawyer that we use. And again, I don't get anything from it. I don't get paid. I don't get a kickback. They just provided awesome service. So I'm just kind of passing that on. We really enjoyed working with them, and we still do. And it just made our lives so much easier. There are some people that say, oh, well, you can do the paperwork yourself. And it's like, you know what? I'm retired. I'm at a time, even though we pinch pennies still, it's like, you know what? I could do it on my own. I could go up to this office here, and then I could go to that office, and then I could bounce back and forth. And then what if I get the paperwork wrong? Well, yeah, I need to go back to this office and then this government office. I would rather just pay somebody to do that for me, because that's the part of being retired, is that I can pay somebody to do that for me and to get all the ducks in a row, and so that I don't have to do it. It was well worth the money in hindsight for me and my wife, in our opinion. Can you do it on your own? Yeah, but I've heard more people have problems by doing it on their own than using an immigration lawyer, or even doing it before you even come to Korea through a Korean consulate. So anyway, your mileage may vary. Ours worked out really well. So anyway, that's retired in Korea, rights of Korean citizens and residents, the things that you can expect here in Korea. And if you retire in Korea, you probably want to look up the things that you can and can't do, what your rights and duties and responsibilities are as a permanent resident or a future permanent resident of that country or whatever country that you're going to retire in. It just amazes me the disconnect of people that will argue and complain, and yet they don't do any due diligence about the country that they're planning to retire on, and so they get angry and mad, and it's like, well, in the United States they do it this way, and it's like, hello, you're not in the United States. What are the odds? You know, everything is going to be different. There's always going to be something different if you go to another country. It's almost like you're in another country. Absolutely crazy. So anyway, that's what we got going on. So I wanted to address those things. And when somebody tells you something, trust but verify. And that's why, with this video on the rights of citizens, check out the Korean Constitution and the preamble, specifically the chapter 2 that we were reading, because that's important. You should do your own due diligence when we're talking about things like this. And that is, the Korean chapter 2, the rights and duties of citizens, Article 10 through Article 39 of the preamble, and you will be able to find that information. As far as buying property, find a good realtor. They can give you the skinny on that. If you need information about immigration, contact an immigration lawyer who is well versed in those processes and things. And there's good lawyers and bad lawyers. There's okay lawyers and there's better lawyers, just like there is in the rest of the world in the United States. You got to do your due diligence and find a highly rated realtor or immigration lawyer or whatever it is. If you're going to settle for somebody that gives 1-star service, then you're going to get 1-star results. There's going to be some more frustration. But with the higher ranked people and ratings, especially here in Korea, ratings are really important. So that gives them the motivation to do better at their job. And it reflects because they give better service, they get more customers. It's kind of a thing. It's what are the odds? So anyway, that's what we got going on. I know this kind of rambled on for almost an hour now, but I thought it was kind of important to talk about these things and trust but verify. And especially if somebody has done it themselves, I've had people argue with me, telling me that I can't buy property. And I'm like, here's a picture of the title, of the deed of my apartment. And see there, it has my name. Tell me how this happened if I'm not allowed to do that. I don't know. I'm just saying. You will always have people that will be the naysayers, regardless of the information that you put out, even if it's verified information. And to those people, you just leave them alone or don't have anything to do with them. Let them go be miserable in their own part of the world. So with that being said, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. I also do videos on 3D printing, painting miniatures, which I need to do more of, and this is my current guy that I'm starting to paint now. Got a long way to go, but I'm retired. Can't go to the gym 24/7, so I got to have some type of other hobbies, and that's one of them: 3D printing and painting and things like that. So to keep abreast of all those things and some fitness stuff as well, like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video. Peace. Yeah.